invoicing with it. He then opened it, he set it up, he configured it, he downloaded what needed to be downloaded. He was the only person that touched or controlled that laptop. And the same proof session was duplicated. And at the end of the proof session, he sat there quietly for a few seconds and then he said, I wondered what I would do if I ever came face to face with Satoshi Nakamoto. And then he turned to Craig, stood up and put his hand out and he said, I just want to say thank you. It was highly emotional. Craig was emotional. And that's where we left it for the day. We went our own ways. We went and Craig and I went and had a glass of wine and then went home, and we met Gavin the next day for breakfast.
Okay, so you have had two proofing sessions, which I guess you deemed as being successful.
Well, they served the purpose, which was to satisfy McGregor that Craig could sign using the keys in front of experts.
How come then that new public sessions were discussed?
This was just a continued escalation that was occurring, and the goal that was coming into the discussions driven by McGregor was that this needed to be done publicly. And Craig's position on that was, it's never going to be done publicly. I'm not going to do it publicly. And I mentioned earlier that I was a mediator. I mean, that was every single day of every week through that period. I was trying to mediate differences of opinion between the two.
Okay, looking at that process in hindsight, is there something that you wished yourself that you had done differently?
A lot. You know, I often think how things could have been differently if I'd have just stood up and said no. And I don't want to be a part of this, and this is not the direction that we should go.
Was this pressure from Mr. McGregor?
Yes.
Okay, tell us briefly what happened during the next meetings between Dr. Craig and media outlets.
There were a lot of meetings between media outlets and sessions with Craig and interviews. I wasn't personally present in those. I was involved and present in the preparations for those and the discussions about and agreements about what would occur in those sessions. Afterwards, I got reports that things didn't go according to plan or agreement. There was a lot of scope creep. And ultimately, we ended up with, you know, the situation where it all fell apart in 2016.
When was that?
May, 4th of May, 2016 was when a coin was meant to be moved and returned on that morning, involving a transaction between Satoshi Nakamoto and Gavin. By the way, I found out subsequently at my meeting with John Matonis 2 months ago that he was also involved in moving a coin, which I didn't know about, and that was an arrangement that was struck between he and McGregor. But coins didn't get moved. There was a blog post ultimately posted saying I'm sorry.
Who did that?
McGregor posted that in my presence.
Why?
To conclude this chapter.
But what was Mr. McGregor's motivation behind doing that?
I don't know. It's speculation on me to say otherwise. Oh, if I could take anything as what his motivation might be, the next morning he came to my office and instructed me to fire everybody at InChain and close the office down. And I said to him, one, I'm not going to do that, and I won't.
So you actually refused to do what Mr. McGregor told you to do, to close the whole operation?
I did. And the outcome of that was that he wanted to exit the investment and exit the business, and I went about finding additional funding for the group, and a private investment fund was ultimately secured to take McGregor's investment.
Okay, so from which point of time did Mr. McGregor exit? Was that from May or later in 2016?
Legally, from an equity and ownership perspective, it was later in the year. It was towards the end of the year, but he had he exited from any involvement in discussions around what was happening in the business on a daily basis from that day.
Okay. Well, from what you say, Mr. Matthews, it was a rather bumpy ride during the spring of 2016. Were you personally, did you change your opinions as to who was Satoshi Nakamoto?
Never.
Why not?
Because I know what I know and I saw what I saw, and my history is my history. I had personal discussions around these topics before Bitcoin was released publicly.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Det kanskje like greit å bare gå rett på. Vær så god, advokat Haukås, eller jeg vet ikke hvem av dere som skal stille spørsmål.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you some question related to what you said first, and then I'll come to my own question afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing is, you said that you received a copy of the white paper in 2008, I understand.
Correct.
And I understand that it was in August.
Correct.
And Craig later said that it was 2 iterations prior to the release of the white paper.
That's what he told me at dinner, yes.
Do you know it was 2 versions prior to the October version or the March version?
I can't say.
And when he said 2 iterations, do you understand that to mean that he worked consecutively with one version and then he made a new version that was a second version?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
And do you have a copy of this paper still?
No.
What did you do with it?
I had it on my laptop in electronic form. I also had a printed version that was on my desk. That was in 2008. I have no idea where the paper version went. I left that company. I moved internationally. My laptop was replaced. You don't know the number of times that I wished that I would have kept that USB stick that I had. But at the time, you don't know that you're going to require that in the future. So no, I don't have a copy.
But you're still quite sure it was both of the date and what you received?
I'm certain.
And was there any other communications between Dr. Wright and you concerning the white paper? Any emails correspondence?
No, not
Any-
that I can recall.
Any SMS, anything that's available for this
No.
now?
No.
Did you communicate with anyone else regarding this white paper at the time?
Not at the time. I have obviously discussed it ad nauseum with people since.
Yeah, but not at the time.
Not at the time.
There wouldn't be any documents available that would actually pinpoint the time to the white paper.
No, there's not.
You said that you were offered 50,000 Bitcoin at some point, and I might be wrong, but I understood that that was the year after, or
Yeah, it was early 2009.
early 2009.
I don't know why. I've been asked this question a lot of times, and I've always had the impression that it was around the Easter period, but I don't know why I say that.
And you said Craig said give me $500. Is that correct?
Yeah, he didn't offer me 50,000 Bitcoin. He said, give me $500.
And regarding the summary of the agreed terms in the summer of 2015, you said that the first priority was to get money to pay the lawyers. And did you become aware of that the lawyers withdrew from representing the Morgan shortly after?
It wasn't necessarily shortly after, it was some months after.
I think it was the next month, wasn't it?
There was a lot of meetings on a daily basis. The lawyers, I had off-the-record conversations with Andrew Summer, and he was in a very difficult position because the Australian Tax Office was a major client of Clayton Woods.
Okay. But do you know that Andrew Summers wrote an email to Ramona Watts the 4th of July?
Yes, I was copied on it, I believe.
I don't know, but still you say it's a few months after? Just a few days?
I don't have it in front of me, so, you know,
You don't remember?
1 month, 2 months, to me, it's, in the context of this time frame, it's close.
Hard to remember? Yeah. So, and in the contract, the summer of agreed terms, I'm not sure if we're going to put it up on the screen, it's not necessarily just on the 384. How much time did you use to sort of negotiate this summary?
As I said earlier, McGregor was with me in Sydney for somewhere between probably around a week to 10 days. The first part of that was a weekend. The first 70% was around doing due diligence, trying to understand what the companies in Australia had been doing and what evidence there was around that and what value there might be in the intellectual property and how that value might be moved into new business enterprises. The tipping point, I can recall a tipping point for McGregor was there was a storeroom, file room in the Morgan office, and it had lever arch files, the 2.5, 3 inch, 4 inch lever arch files around all the walls. Hundreds, I'd say 200 to 300 files that represented the catalogue of research work that had been undertaken under the research programs approved by Oz Industry. Somehow, McGregor came to me and said, come into this room, have a look at this file. File was laying there. He said, have a look at this document. I looked at it and said, what's so important about this document? He said, have a look at the dates in this document. There were files in there and file notes from 2006 describing aspects of blockchain and the technology that we're talking about today.